judges of the regular courts who are given sufficient support and training to be able to better handle these kinds of cases. So what do we need our judges to be able to do? We need judges to be able to be fair. This may seem obvious, but in the environmental field in particular, it is essential that judges are devoted to the rule of law. That is, that they will apply the law equally. And to use an old phrase in the that is at least still current in some of the constitutions of the states within the United States, to do their work without fear or favor. Secondly, which has also been alluded to, we need judges who have a certain level of what I'm going to call environmental or scientific literacy. That is, the ability to understand and the willingness to grapple with environmental complexity and interrelatedness in the evidence that comes before the court. And I should mention that this does not require that the judge becomes a scientist or has to have necessarily scientific or technical training. It means that the judge must be sufficiently trained to be able to understand and interpret scientific evidence that comes before the court. And third, we need to give the judges the tools and techniques necessary to do their jobs and to fashion innovative remedies that actually can make a difference. It is provide some means of judges around the world to share the practices from around the world that work well. And these are procedures and remedies as well as the substantive law. So that's basically what I wanted to toss out to this group, and I look forward to the other presentation that will come out of this workshop. And I'm not entirely whether I want to stay for all of it, but I look forward to hearing about it in any event at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. So, Jay Pendergrass, there you are. So if you would mind being there's the mic up there.
That works, but you might have to take her. I don't know whether she can see.
No, I'll need to, Jay, I'll need to make a couple of adjustments while we work, but, so.
I think this is, yeah, so this is working.
Okay, great.
Lynn, will you be calling me back on the laptop?
Yes.
Now!
But I have an excellent view on one side and right in front of me. Oops.
All right. Bear with me. Go ahead, Jay, and I'll get Meredith up. Well, actually, it might make a little noise.
Go ahead.
You can put it down.
Not totally
Yeah.
pressing your time.
All right. Let's give this a shot. So in Vermont, where Judge Wright is, it's 1:36 in the morning. So she stayed up late for us. Okay, good.
And hello again, Meredith. Well, it's really impressive that we're able to do this and bring her in from halfway around the world. I'm Jay Pendergrass, Senior Attorney and Director of the Judicial Education Program at the Environmental Law Institute. As Nick mentioned, that's something that we've actually been doing since 1990 at the Environmental Law Institute, working with judges to build capacity. It resulted from, or the program grew out of The Environmental Law Institute gives an award every year to a individual for career service and contributions to environmental law. In 1989, the recipient was a federal court of appeals judge who had issued several important decisions on the environment. And in his speech, he challenged ELI and the bar more generally, saying that judges, and he was speaking about the United States, judges don't know anything about environmental law, and you can't expect to get justice when the judges don't know anything about these cases, and challenged the Environmental Law Institute and everyone else present, which was about 700 environmental lawyers, to do something about educating judges. Our president at the time, Bill Futrell, didn't let me leave the room before he said that we needed to do something to take up this challenge. And the next week we were meeting to figure out how to go about doing it. And we started training judges in the United States, focusing on the state courts, because that's where the vast majority of cases in the United States are handled. Over the next 6 years, trained judges from 15 states individually, and provided a resource manual that was given to the judicial institutes and state supreme courts for all the states in the country, as well as doing individual sort of lectures about introductions to environmental law to the federal courts as they met in conferences over the years. Very shortly after we started doing this, Minister Benjamin had been to the United States to ELI in 1990, and we continued working together. And I think as soon as he found out that we were doing this, he said, it's not just needed in the United States, we need it in other places, and invited us to expand the program to Brazil. We quickly, we ended up, I think, doing 6 or 7 programs with in Brazil, and as been said, Brazil has judicial institutes. They've taken this up, but at the same time, we were doing it in many other countries. Ended up at this point, we've worked with judges from 24 countries, which we're very proud of that. But that leaves 175 or so other countries that we haven't dealt with. There are a number of other, as Nick mentioned, there are a lot of other organizations that have been doing this. The regional programs that UNEP and IUCN have done have reached, in particular, the chief justices and judges of high courts of many countries, but that still leaves the majority of judges that are working in particular countries without having had the benefit of this. The Australian Agency for International Development has been very active in training judges, particularly in the Asian region and Pacific, and there are others that have as well. The hallmark of what we have done, and I think it's generally true of the Australian programs, has been to try and work with the judicial institutes or other organizations in a particular country that, and with the goal of trying to have these programs continue after we are gone. That's been very much the case in Brazil. It's also been the case in Uganda. A few other notable successes in that regard. But one of the things that we've noticed is that in probably most of the places that we've worked, there's no institutional capacity to continue it. Largely that's funding. In many places it's also interest. And the interest in a lot of ways is not that there's a lack of interest in it, but not realizing that these are cases that are coming before the courts. In Chile, the Judicial Institute said, well, we work on whatever the judges tell us. We send out a survey once a year. We ask for the top 5 priorities the judges have, and then that's what we have funding to do. Well, environmental law hasn't come up as one of the top 5 priorities, but when we did programs there, they were oversubscribed by judges who, have had a case or more and recognize the need to learn more about it. Just recently, WADLI, as a follow-up to the Rio Plus 20 World Congress that Nick and Shayla mentioned, one of the judges, Justice Mansour from Pakistan, was in the United States, and we were meeting with him, and he commented that there are, I think it was 26 green benches in Pakistan, and he is working with them, and to an extent overseeing these are trial court judges. But though they have established the green bench and have judges on them, none of them really have received training in environmental law, and so he was requesting education on environmental law for these already established green benches. Recently, Meredith didn't mention it, but she led a 2-week program educating judges, some of the judges from green benches and some other judges from China about environmental law. They spent 2 intensive weeks learning about environmental law and environmental adjudication in Vermont, and then met with Nick at PACE and with us and the Environmental Protection Agency in DC. So even when there are these green benches, they don't necessarily have the expertise. However many, and it's hard to keep up with the number of specialized environmental courts, it's still far fewer than half of the countries in the world have these courts. So we need to be providing the capacity, helping people develop their own capacity in all of the courts, because as Meredith said, it's clear all of the courts need to be able to handle these cases, and whether they are specialized benches or not. The Commission on Environmental Law at IUCN, PACE, Law School, the Environmental Law Institute have proposed this virtual institute, an international judicial institute on the environment, to work with judges around the world, to work with the judicial institutes, to build the capacity of judges and to build the capacity of the judicial institutes to carry on this work within their jurisdictions. As Nick mentioned, this is something that we see as a virtual thing. I think it needs to have a body to administer it and run it, at least get it started. And we're proposing to do that. But really, the idea is to link judges so that they can communicate among themselves about their decisions, their analysis, to work with the judicial institutes and others who are interested in building capacity of judges, to provide materials, the decisions, so that people will have access to the information, and to facilitate really the capacity building that we've been talking about. This is something that really needs the help of everyone around the world, and we're certainly seeking the partnerships. This is something that Sal has been very good at over the years, drawing on the efforts of members from around the world. That's what we need to do for this in order to make it a success. So we're looking forward to expanding the network and getting started on doing the important work. Thank you.
So, is this working? Yeah. Justice Benjamin. And just so you know, we can have a round of questions for the speakers when everybody's finished, and then I guess maybe the speakers can have a round of questions for you, but at some point we want to make sure that we all have introductions and know who we all are sitting with.
Well, thank you, Lynn Harman, for putting together this wonderful program. Perhaps not for Judge Meredith. It's 1 a.m. in Vermont, but I'm sure she's enjoying, and I can see her in front of me. So keep the time. It's much easier if you do it from Vermont and our colleagues that are sitting here. I am Antonio Benjamin. I'm a justice in the High Court of Brazil. Before that, I was a public prosecutor for 24 years. And when I started working in this long collaboration with ELI, I was a public prosecutor, but we decided to do capacity building for judges. That's not the word that we use in Portuguese. Judges are supposed to know everything, and we in fact know everything, and we say we know everything. And ELI at that time was, frankly, I personally didn't understand why ELI was putting so much emphasis on judges, because it was right before Rio 92, and the whole world was thinking in terms of treaty making, making sure that in Rio new conventions and a good declaration were passed, and ELI was thinking much beyond that in terms of compliance and enforcement. And this was much before INIS emerged in many years later. But I think nowadays we all realize that ELI was right. And in fact, we are meeting here somehow to celebrate the initiative that was this lead that was taken by ELI. The curiosity here is that we still have the same people doing the same thing. And when I say the same people, it's Jay Pendergrass, who has just spoken, but also Nicholas Robinson, who has had this vision for the Commission on Environmental Law that would involve not just what we would expect from a commission, you know, a sort of nice club of friends, but as a space in which all actors of the environmental law family would engage and be engaged. Even more important, to be engaged. And as you know, he built several of the things that we have nowadays in our commission, starting with the specialist groups. Second, and I'll name just two,